Welcome back. Number 3. I was on a roll, so I thought I'd keep going. Now we might actually get into some building. I think I'm going to need to talk so much shit for so long. I'll start actually with this, and it's a case, it's not a bezel, it's something to do with diving. Don't exactly know. If you're doing a traditional tachymeter, for instance, that's quite, well, it's not simple, it's very long-winded, but each of these, there is a mathematical equation I use to find out where they need to go. This one, I'm basically going to have to follow where it is here. It seems fairly symmetrical because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it's a matter of how to get, if I just zoom in a bit here, get this detail of this notched edge, which I don't mind doing, very time consuming, taking all of these out and highlighting where it's set in and embossing the actual colour there itself. That's a better example of it there. Now it's slightly highlighted out here, which is the light hitting this, be shaded on this side, and then these are actually beveled themselves. So it's all about depth, trying to give it depth and perception. It's all smoke and mirrors really, but it is what it is. Right, so what I'll actually do is I keep using the words templates, call them what you like. I've done a lot of these metal work. I'll load one up because I need to do it as a layer anyway. I'll file, open, and it's this metal work case that I'm going to use. And I saved a whole bunch under steel. 2K steel, what am I talking about? It's there. That is one. Also a round one. I can look at that. That's what actually happens when you don't tell it to open as a layer. It opens a new window, so it's actually wrong. But I'm not convinced that will work anyway. I'll delete that. So we're back in here again. So I go File, instead of open as layers. So it'll add that image that I want as a layer in this window. And I think that one might be better. And somewhere along the line I'll show you how to do these. These are also very simple to do. But I think that's what I'll use. I'll experiment with that. It's a little hard to explain, but the way I do it, I actually start with that and I almost work in the negative. I then take things out of it, take things off it, round it. Little hard to explain, but if you do it the other way, you gradually build this metalwork up. You lose these subtle shades and shadows, which tends to mean you lose the effect. So what I'll do, I'll put that underneath there. We'll now just get the size or close to it. So once again, it's Control, just use the mouse wheel, get it in the center. It starts there by default. You think I'd learn that by now, but I make errors on this thing every day, so don't worry about it. So what I want to do is work out the cutout, which is about there. This won't be exactly center, mind you, it's not bad because that's a reflective image inside. Sometimes I do them, it's not bad. It doesn't need to be spot on. You sort of pick a point of where you want to work from, and I don't know, I just normally do it from the left hand side. I'll come in a little bit more because that'll almost tie that in with that. That'll do. So what I do is I click that off. You can leave it on, doesn't make any difference, but click this one off, highlight it. So highlight like so, delete. I'm going to delete the center of it because I know that's ultimately what I'm going to end up doing. Now if I put that up there, for instance, there you go. It's kind of there, but it's nothing like it, so still lots of work to do. So bring that back down, get rid of that. Just click off it out of the window just to get rid of that. Now what I do is to do the serrated edge, this toothed edge. Now I think if I work out the easiest way to do this, I use lots of layers that you guys never see. I actually make sure they're not visible when I finish, and they're all sort of layers I use for building things. Now if I get rid of both of those, all I've done, zoom in, it's only 2 pixels wide because I just want a line. I can fill that. And it's an easy way to fill. Well, I'll pick a colour that'll be highly, I'll go up to red. Now, once again, Control and left mouse arrow. Oops, left arrow. No, what have I done? that's interesting. Oh, God, I haven't got that highlighted, you idiot. Okay, sorry, my fault. There you go, that's what happens. Now, Control left arrow does this actual foreground colour and useless bit of information, but same thing, Control the right hand arrow does the background. So I just use that quite often. You can use it, you can fill here, you can fill with a paintbrush, you can do all sorts of things. GIMP's all about shortcuts, I suppose, like any software. The better shortcuts you got, the better off you'll be. Now, what I'll do, I'll just go backwards. Now that's that. Go backwards. I'll make sure there's nothing in there. There we go. Now I'll leave that and I'll add a new layer once again. This one I'll put on top of that because it'll come in handy. Get rid of that. Now Control left arrow will fill that with red. Now the reason I've done that, I'll bring that visible again. I basically want to work out how many teeth. The easiest way to do that is break it down into your 1 o'clock position because that is 30 degrees of the watch. So if I go Control C while this is highlighted and Control V, Control C copies, Control V posts straight back where it came from. So what it'll do, it'll leave the one underneath, which is the original one I made, and then if I go to rotate, which is this one here, rotate tool, click on this, because this is exactly 1000 by 1000, sorry, it'll bring up the center. That's what I'm getting at. You don't have to, you'll notice there's the center highlighted there. This is actually how you do hands. As you can see, it's moving, but I put it in the center of the image. So it's not quite, zoom in a bit, 1000 by 1000. You can actually do that manually too, by doing that. Do it quite often. But what I want to do is move that, highlight that, just put 30 degrees, hit tab, rotate. See what that's done, won't line exactly up with the face because the face is not perfectly round, it's always this problem. So if that's 30 degrees, and as you can see that's basically at the base of this serrated edge. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15, which works out perfectly, which is quite commonly done deliberately because it's related to how many degrees around the watch. So every one is 2 degrees wide. It's just how I work these things out. So once again, you'll never actually see that. I leave it, drag it down the bottom, just in case for some reason I need it as a reference, but I don't highlight this as I said on a previous tutorial. I do that for what I'm keeping or that I need to see as visible. So what I do now, we'll go to make sure that's outer, and this is where you almost need a high level of OCD here. A lot of people don't worry about this. This is the type of detail I like, so I spend hours on this stuff. And I'm going to edit this video down so you don't see a lot of this. It'll just bore you to tears. And then you want to go internally, go on the next one, come off the center, and I guess this is where we need to pick how high these teeth are going to be. Or serrated edge, call it whatever you like. I'll go to about there, I think. Try that, click off it. It's a matter of interest, you can measure this. There's a measuring tool there. Use this window, make sure that's highlighted, and all it'll do, it'll give you how many pixels. 14, it's not bad, it's gone from the top to the bottom. That's not bad. Okay, so now what I do is I overlay this, and what I will do, let me click off that. I've actually partially made that difficult for myself. What I should have done, because I worked out, let me highlight that again. You can do, I'll just make it wider, it makes it easier, so I can drag that down, working off the center. I do virtually everything from the 12 o'clock position. It's something that's spread all around the face anyway, from the 12 o'clock, and then rotate it. And I'll show you how to do that right now. Now once again, that's highlighted, Control C, Control V, because that's copied it, just copied what's inside that box. Now I want to rotate it. As I said, they're each 2 degrees, so if I go now this has changed here, as you can see, put it up there. because it's the middle of what I've drawn. I want it to come off. Had I done this before, where I've had that, I could have done it then, but my mistake, no biggie. So it's 2 degrees. So if I go minus 1 degree off center, you can see what it's just done. I go, okay, I'll rotate in this case. Now, Control V will put the same thing back, but not where it was. So I need to manually move that. I need to make sure, as you can see, it's moved it. So I'll work off the bottom, move it into the center. There you go, rotate. Once again, this is not here. The easiest way to actually fix that, I said, everything will be in the center. There it is there, because it's 2000 by 2000. Center is 1000 by 1000, obviously. And then we just rotate that. So it'll go in 0.1 of a degree. So if I go, I can do it whichever way, 1 degree. So that will give a total width now of each tooth of 2 degrees. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and you may or may not ever bother about this, but it just is how I do it. I worked out, nothing tells you this stuff, I just did it through trial and error. Now there's the outer part of the tooth. It's what I started doing before, which was a little bit of a mistake, but that's no biggie. Go back there. So it's only a matter of zooming in. Go to like up a little bit higher, about there. What does that measure? It's a matter of interest. 13, that's one higher than it was before. This is the level of detail I get down to, basically. Now, get rid of that. Yep, that'll work. Now, what we want to do is cut out one tooth, basically. Now, this all makes sense later. So you use this lasso mode, they call it free select tool. Make sure it's on this third box because you want to remove from what is here. So what I do, knowing how this works, what I want to do is end up basically with a triangle, which will be the cutout, then reproduce that triangle. And this is where I say I work in reverse. I then highlight that triangle, take that off that metalwork, and then smooth the edges off. But I know if I come off there, this is so fine-tuned, it's actually going to lift the intersection point up one. So I'll actually do it 2 pixels wide, go for about the center of where that line is, which is about there. And then this is going to look a bit weird. This is removing most of what I've highlighted. It's not removing the image. Go about the middle there, go about there. And I'll basically leave, you can see now it's left this triangle. It's not removed anything. I go back out of there, I can close that down even now, I don't actually need that anymore. Now I can fill that, doesn't matter once again with what colour. Now, oops, my fault. We need, we'll leave that there, that won't hurt, that can hide, we'll leave it a new layer, and we'll fill that with white, which is Control and left arrow. Just click off that. Now if you can picture that as being metal, that is actually what I'm taking out. That makes sense. Now Control C, once again, now this is the active level, active layer, sorry. Control V will put it straight back over, but now this will always work off the center. I want to make it move 2 degrees. And this is where I work. Sorry, you've got to click off it first, and then go 2. Okay, repeat it again, it'll put it straight back on this, so you've got to add 2 degrees to the 2 degrees, which is very obviously 4 degrees, so it becomes 2 degrees increments. So what I actually look at, as long as they are close to overlapping, which they are, if they're too far apart, it means I've done the maths wrong. Control V, do it again. Now I'll pause this in just a moment. 6 degrees there, I'll pause it now, I'm back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. She didn't need to watch that. This is where it all is a bit boring. What I've done is I've just kept that going until I've got to the 30 degrees. So from there it's quite a simple case of Alt-C. Sorry, Control-C. I don't even know why I said that. Control-V. So Control-C is copied all 15 of them, or 30 degrees of them. Now, to save you, in an ideal world you do each one of those, but you've got to do it so many times, 180 times, it's just absurd. Nobody would do that. not even me. So you rotate that whole thing 30 degrees. Do it again, Control V. It's the last thing you copied, it puts it back into that same place. You don't have to center it, don't have to move anything, just rotate it. Now in 30 degrees equals 60 degrees. So I could show you. So that's basically done a quarter. So you can go Control C, Control V again, which covers the whole quarter, and this is where you can go into Layer, Transform, Flip horizontally. So it copies that to there, and then you Control C, Control V, copies the whole thing, go back into Layer, Transform, Flip vertically. That's how you do the whole thing. So it's a quicker way of doing it. Now, what I need to do is set what is white at the moment on this layer. As you can see, this is still intact underneath. This one on top is white. They're the ones I want to cut out. Now, you can use this one up here, which is fuzzy select. Select all the white. But as you can see, and this is what I don't like, and it doesn't do it accurately. If I just undo that, you can also click off it. Still doesn't, it's slightly better, still not accurate. So believe it or not, what I do, and once again I'll pause this again a minute, is I bring up, go back here, this is where people I don't think will ever bother spending time, it's just what I enjoy doing, so I do it. What I'm going to do is this, highlight the both inner and outer circles here of where I want it. And what I will start doing, and as I said, I shall return, but it's the way to get it perfect. You bring this one up again, you make sure this is the active one, and believe it or not, you can click outside this, that's not a problem, to there, to there, to there, to there, to there, and as you can see, it's cut this out. You can see it's still not quite right, so what I'll do is I'll go from there, I'll pick the center, it's there, that's better. Still not quite right, but that's basically how I do it. So I'll be back in a moment once I cut all that out. It does take a while. Actually, I've decided to do it a slightly different way, just thinking about it. What I'll show you though, what happens if you use this selective tool, you can actually use this one as well, which is select by color. Still does the same thing. See, it keeps missing these out. It's not that good. But if you use that, that's what I want to remove, right? They're white. So if I remove that, make that the active layer, and just hit delete. That's basically what happens. But as you can see, it gets this horrible, jagged, nothing edge. Now, in a lot of cases, a lot of people wouldn't worry about that. I don't like that. So I'm going to highlight each piece manually. It'll take me a while. I'll be back when I'm done. I'm back. Now I've highlighted those manually. Didn't end up doing the inner and outer. Circle that I had shown before was actually easier. To do that I used that. This is going to kill this for a minute, but basically that's what you do. And on each of these I just went backwards and forwards on myself. So I kept doing like that. And then the next one was like that. Interesting point though, you need to be well aware of where these are at the time. If you don't, you'll start here, go backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, all the way around. You get back here, they won't link up again because you have to link back to your, for instance, if I do that, very poorly done, you've got to link back to the one you started. That's just obviously using that and the left mouse button, by the way, I never actually said. And as you can see, then it closes that loop. It won't close the loop if it's there because of this subtract from the current selection, which is not what you're trying to do. So once you've highlighted all that, I can remove that, and once again that becomes a layer that I don't really need to look at again, but I make that the active layer. Now if I go to, sorry, I have to invert the selection. Now you can see it's quite different to how it was before. It fades in and out along these lines, and there may need to be some cleaning up in here because it depends on when I've highlighted that, exactly when I went from here to here, for instance, whether I went outside the actual image. In some cases I may not have, whoops, get rid of that, do that, but it doesn't look too bad. So I can actually unhighlight that. It looks pretty good. You'll soon know because it will stand out. You can zoom right in. If you zoom too far in, by the way, that's what happens. You end up with a white background. Doesn't really mean anything. It just, that's where it loses that definition, I suppose. So that's basically the cutouts. Now what I do from there is I will go to layer effects, and this is this bevel emboss I spoke about. What I'll actually do is I'll also do a copy of that. So Control C, and I'll just show you that I have, that's active, Control C, new layer, Control V, just repost it again. Now, effectively, right, nothing there, that one's there, that one's there. So what I'll do, I'll make this yet, and I'll show you why I've done that. 20 minutes is almost up, believe it or not, so I'll just do this and I'll show you the outcome. So if we go layer, and you'll see why I just made a copy. Layer effects, bevel emboss. Now we want it as an inner bevel, not an outer. This is always up because it means the light once again is represented coming from this way. If you go down, it reverses the whole process. You can go to depth, and I'll assume it's probably about 10. Size, and you'll see, I'll vary these in a minute and you'll see what happens. Size, and this is how it softens the curve basically. That represents where the light's coming from. This is the opacity of the actual shadows themselves, and I always like to have this on about 80, which is the white, and the black basically half that, around 40. It doesn't need to be spot on. Leave the scale alone, merge with layer. If you don't merge with layer, it does the whole process, but it gives you all these different layers. I just find that a bit annoying. So you push OK. That's basically what you get, which is not right. It's too, but you can see how, see it's shaded down on this side, more white on this side. So I'll take that back off again, because you can see the edges are pretty clean as well. So you layer effects, bevel emboss, go back to the same thing. I'll take that down a bit, take that down a lot, probably about there, and I'll try it. Once again, it's all trial and error. It's whatever you're happy with, whatever looks nice. See, there's a good example. See, the light's coming from this side, it's white, the other side is shaded. So that's probably about it. I don't mind that. You can, now the reason I made a copy is when you do that, it affects the whole object you're working on. So it does the same thing on the inside. And at this point, I don't know if I want that, as in there's the inside of the other one, there's the inside of this one. It shaded that. I don't know that I want that as yet. So what I do, what I've just done, make that the active layer. This might seem a little odd, but what you can do is make a circle that's going to be wrong because it's not there, my fault. You could learn by now, but that happens. Now all I'm doing, go to about there, click off it, oops, what am I doing? Control I. So what I've done, I've inverted the selection so it's what on outside I want. So I Control C to copy it, completely get rid of that for the moment, go back here, make that the active layer, go Control V, and it drops it straight back on top of where it came off. All of these textures and shades will match because it's come off the same piece. And so the difference is, see how this is now gone? There's the layer I'm going to keep, that's the one I don't want. So once again, I can drop that down there, it may come in handy, might have to cut something out of it later. But basically that's it there. That will. Now I can do all sorts of crazy things with this. I will lighten it, it's too dark for starters, so we can actually go into colour, sorry, go into levels, sorry, not levels, my fault. Curves. You'll use this a lot. I use it all the time. You can see what it starts to do, but of course the beauty of it is you can start doing all sorts of odd things. Now I've got some I've set up previously that I use for metal. Some of them work, some of them don't. See, I don't really like all this stuff going on. If you're building one from scratch, it works quite well because it's a lot darker the way I do it. So I probably won't use any of those. Just hit reset. But I might lighten it up a bit. I actually find that a little. I don't want to completely remove the shadowing because I don't mind that. So if you hit reset, that's where it starts. If you just go straight lighter, it's not bad either. I guess about there. I don't mind that. Okay, so that's basically, will end up being that. Now I've got to do all the rest of this work to it. Possibly put a slight bevel on the inside. The other thing you can do with this, which I don't mind, it tends to highlight everything a little bit. I'm almost out of time here, but if we go filters, decor, it's buried in decor, add bevel. Now, remove that, because if you don't, it then generates a whole new window with this layer in it. You can do that, but see what that does there? If I undo it, now you can mess around a bit with decor and bevel. You can reduce it, you can enlarge it. You've got to be a little careful. For instance, if you make it really large, you can see how far it's working back on it. It does all sorts of weird things, which I don't like, but to each their own. To me, it's not really a sawtooth edge. So I try to be very subtle in most things I do, but I'll try that down a little lower, down about 3. Just subtly want to make it slightly brighter. That's not bad. So each of those are perfectly then in shape. A lot more interesting when these are rounded. Takes a lot more effort. But there you go. That's kind of the outer edge of that, and I'll see you next time if you want to continue watching. Bye.